The beginning and Koko's ambition. In the quiet coastal village of Waramba, where the sea whispered secrets to those who dared listen, lived a boy named Koko. He was born to a humble family whose livelihood nosedived when his father developed serious arthritis and could no longer cultivate their farm. They struggled to get 2 meals daily after this happened, but near their village lies a coast to a vast ocean, which Koko had longed to explore in the near future. When Koko turned 15, his zeal for adventure into the captivating, vast, mysterious ocean grew. He dreamed of joining the fishermen on their nocturnal voyages someday and learn the ways of the sea. One fateful night after Koko turned 15, he decided it was time to chase his dream. He snuck out of his home, determined to reach the seaside by dawn to join the fishermen before they set sail. Koko trekked through the dense foliage that blanketed the path to the beach. An eerie stillness settled around him. The night was unusually quiet, save for the distant crashing of the waves. As Koko approached the seaside, a piercing chill sliced through the balmy night air, transforming the atmosphere with an eerie and palpable tension. The moon, a spectral witness hanging low in the sky, bathed the beach in a silvery glow that seemed to twist and curl into ghostly shadows on the sandy ground. It was in this otherworldly light that 3 figures emerged, their forms merging from the very essence of the nocturnal mist, woven from shadows and the thick, salty air of the ocean. 2 of these figures, with eyes like darkened embers, gave off an aura of malevolence. They were the wicked witches of local lore, the fabled witches of Waramba's darkest tales, creatures of night and nightmare, feared by all who knew of their existence. The 3rd figure, the fair witch cloaked in a light that seemed to dance like the morning sun on the sea's surface, radiated warmth and protection. As they drew near, the wicked, sinister duo began to encircle Koko, their movement fluid and haunting, like smoke twisting through the still night air. Their voices, chilling and relentless, pierced the silence with ominous prophecies. The first witch, her voice a sinister hiss that seemed to slither through the darkness, declared, "You will find power, but it shall be your ruin." Her companion, the second witch with a cruel sneer that distorted her shadowed features, added, "Seek the depths, and you shall forever remain beneath the waves, ensnared by your own ambition." Frozen by a terror that clutched his heart with icy fingers, Koko felt an overwhelming urge to flee, to escape the malevolent presence of these harbingers of doom. Yet his legs betrayed him, rooted to the spot as if the cool, damp sand had turned to stone. The chilling prophecies echoed in his mind, a horrific melody accompanied by the relentless crash of the waves. Just as despair gripped him, the 3rd figure, the good witch, approached. Her voice was like a gentle breeze as she whispered, "Fear not, young Koko. The darkness speaks only of possible futures. Listen well, for I offer you a gift and a warning." She told Koko that he would possess superhuman strength each night from dusk to dawn, typically around 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., meaning that the power would wear off as the day broke. "But heed this," she cautioned, "boast not of this gift, nor reveal its origins to any soul. Only through humility can misfortune be kept at bay." With a wave of her luminescent hand, a spell was cast upon Koko. He felt a surge of energy pulse through his veins, a power so intense it nearly overwhelmed him. Then, as suddenly as they had appeared, the witches vanished, leaving Koko alone under the cloak of night, his heart pounding with newfound power. He has just been bestowed with powers beyond human limits. Just as despair tightened its icy grip on Koko's soul, the 3rd figure stepped forward, her presence like a beacon of light piercing through a storm. Cloaked in an aura of shimmering gold that danced like sunlight across rippling water, the good witch moved with an ethereal grace that seemed to still the restless night. Her gaze met Koko's, and in her eyes he found a well of calm and assurance. When she spoke, her voice was soft yet commanding, carrying the soothing cadence of a breeze that whispered through the palm trees at dusk. "Fear not, young Koko," she said, her words wrapping around him like a warm embrace. "The darkness speaks only of what could be, not what must be. The path ahead is yours to shape, but I offer you both a gift and a warning. Listen well. You shall possess superhuman strength, strength beyond human reckoning," she declared, her voice steady and unwavering. From dusk till dawn, the night will be your ally, and within those hours, your power will be unmatched. And, she continued, her tone now edged with gravity, but heed this. Boast not of this gift, nor reveal its origins to any soul. Only through humility can misfortune be kept at bay, for only with pride and carelessness are doors through which misfortune will surely come. As she raised her hand, a golden light began to emanate from her palm, growing brighter until it filled Koko's vision. A wave of warmth surged through his body, and he gasped as the energy coursed through him, igniting every fiber of his being with a power so immense it was both exhilarating and terrifying. His heart raced as he felt his muscles tighten and his senses sharpen, his very essence transformed in a single breathtaking moment. And then, just as swiftly as they had appeared, the witches were gone. The shadows of the night returned to their natural stillness, leaving Koko alone beneath the expansive canopy of stars. His breath came in short bursts, his mind reeling from the encounter. Koko stood motionless, his hands trembling as he flexed his newfound strength. The gift and the burden left by the good witch weighed heavy on his heart. Alone in the night, with the faint glow of the moon above, Koko vowed to wield this power wisely, knowing that his destiny was forever changed. He had to meet Mr. Jeffrey, the captain of the Sea Whisperer, the vessel he was about to join. He journeyed on towards the coast until he finally arrives there. The captain accepted Koko to join as cabin boy, to work on the ship as an apprentice, learning the ropes and the trade, and assisting the officers and crew. He will be paid nominally. Koko accepted thankfully, knowing that with this job he would be able to assist his family financially. The first voyage, Night of the Leviathan. The wooden hull of the fishing canoe creaked as it rocked gently in the tide, moonlight dancing across the water like silver fireflies. Koko sat near the bow, heart pounding, eyes wide with wonder. The fishermen around him, men hardened by salt, wind, and years of braving the deep, welcomed him with gruff nods and quiet smiles. The air was thick with anticipation and the scent of the sea, alive with untold possibilities. Koko's hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the energy coursing through him since his encounter with the witches. He could feel the power beneath his skin, humming like a storm held in flesh. It was almost 7 p.m. The strength was already building. They paddled farther from the shore, the lights of Waramba dwindling behind them until only the stars and the sea remained. Nets were cast with rhythmic precision. Koko mimicked the motions, learning quickly, absorbing every detail. Suddenly, the calm was shattered. A low rumble echoed beneath the waves like a distant growl. The sea began to churn violently, and their ship rocked hard, drawing gasps and curses from the crew. A monstrous shadow loomed beneath the surface, vast, serpentine, ancient. "It's the Leviathan," one of the elder fishermen cried out, his eyes wide with terror. "The sea beast of legend." Panic rippled across the boat. Nets were abandoned. Oars clattered. Koko, however, stood frozen, not in fear, but in awe. Then it breached. Suddenly a titanic creature erupted from the depths, a serpentine beast with scales like blackened iron and eyes that glowed like burning coals. Its roar tore through the night like thunder. The fishermen began praying. One even tried to leap overboard, but was already imbued with supernatural power as it was after dusk. Without thought, without hesitation, his body surged with strength. Bones cracked with force, muscles swelled, and his senses sharpened like a hawk's. Koko moved. Time seemed to slow. He grabbed the fleeing man with one hand, yanking him back into the boat like he weighed nothing. The fisherman stared in awe. The Leviathan charged. Koko didn't run. He leapt, higher than seemed humanly possible, his body slicing through the night air like a blade. He landed on the beast's snout, driving his fist with unnatural force into its skull. The sea exploded around them. The beast shrieked and thrashed, diving beneath the waves with a furious cry, dragging Koko with it. For a moment, all was silent. Minutes later, he surfaced, soaked, gasping and triumphant. The sea had tested him sooner than expected. The Leviathan was gone, vanished into the abyss, perhaps wounded or humbled by this strange glowing boy. The fisherman pulled Koko back on board. Not a single word was spoken for a full minute, only the waves whispered and the stars shimmered. Then one of them, the eldest, muttered, "The sea has chosen him." Koko said nothing. He remembered the good witch's warning. Boast not of this gift. So he smiled humbly, shrugging off the praises, saying it was just luck, adrenaline, anything but magic. They resumed fishing in awe-laced silence, and though the catch was modest, the spirits were high. As they turned the boat toward home, the horizon glowing faintly with the promise of dawn, Koko sat at the edge, gazing at the sea with renewed wonder. He had faced the wrath of the deep, and with a power he barely understood. As Waramba's sleepy shoreline welcomed them back, Koko stepped onto land with aching limbs and a burning heart. He looked back at the sea, smiling to himself. He could hardly wait for the next voyage, the second voyage. Pirate attack. The sun sank behind the horizon in a blaze of crimson and gold, casting long shadows across the restless sea. For most, the coming night brought fear, but for Koko it brought strength. The fame of his first voyage was whispered across Waramba like fire on dry grass. Koko was welcomed back aboard the Sea Whisperer, the fisherman's most trusted vessel. The others looked at him with newfound respect, not just as a boy, but as a brother forged in sea storm and salt. None questioned his place among them now. The sails caught the dusk wind, and the boat glided into open waters. Nets were lowered, the mood light. Koko smiled at the sky, excited, full adventure, ready. He was entering into his dream ambition, familiarizing himself with the sea on which he had hoped to build his future career as a sailor and eventually acquire his own vessel as captain. His dreams are gradually unfolding. He was pleased about this. The pirate ambush, fire on the sea, the sound of the marine creatures and the ocean itself wove into some cacophony of sounds along with the fresh breeze. But then Koko heard something else. A low thrum, like the beating of war drums muffled beneath the waves, a flicker on the horizon, torchlight. Alas, the Sea Whisperer wasn't alone. From the dark came shouts, then the sharp twang of arrows. A black-hulled ship, faster and wider, closing in. Pirates, faces masked, eyes gleaming with greed. They had tracked the Waramba fishermen for days, knowing their route, knowing they'd carry fresh catch and coins. "Defend the boat!" yelled Mr. Jeffrey, the old captain. But the pirates were already upon them, grappling hooks flying, blades gleaming in the lantern glow. The fishermen fought valiantly, wielding oars and knives, but the pirates were seasoned killers, outnumbering them 2-1. Panic spread until Koko stepped forward to turn the tide. His strength had fully awakened. With a roar that cut through the chaos, Koko hurled one pirate clean off the deck with a single swing of an oar. Another charged. He ducked, spun, and smashed the man into the mast, splintering the wood. His movements were a blur, a dance of unstoppable force. The pirates reeled, confused. What kind of strange boy was this? One pirate lunged with a machete. Koko caught the blade in his bare hand, ripped the weapon away, and knocked the attacker into the sea with a mighty kick. Now emboldened, the fishermen rallied beside him. Shoulder to shoulder, they continued to fight back. Harpoons flew, fists pummeled, and boots struck. Captain Jeffrey fought like a lion, and inspired by Koko's fearlessness, the younger crewmates matched his fury. After what felt like hours, the pirate ship caught fire from a spilled oil lantern, and the sea hissed as flames licked the sails of their ship. The pirates, defeated and desperate, dove deep into the ocean. They vanished into the dark, leaving their plunder and shame behind. Captain Jeffrey and his crew were victorious, thanks to Koko's awesome assistance. The Sea Whisperer rocked gently once more, stained with battle but still afloat. No fishermen were lost. Most were bruised, battered, but alive, and richer now with the loot the pirates left behind. As the sun rose, most of the men laughed. Koko stood quietly wrapping his cut knuckles in cloth. When the crew burst into spontaneous cheering, chanting his name, "Koko, Koko the Invincible," he only bowed his head humbly, remembering the warning, "Boast not of this gift." Homecoming. The dock at Waramba was alive with cries of joy and awe as the fishermen returned, their story spreading like wildfire. Children clung to Koko's legs, and elders patted his shoulders in gratitude. The pirates would never threaten Waramba again, not with Koko on board. That evening, with his share of the voyage's reward in a satchel, Koko walked home. The small clay house stood as he'd left it, quiet beneath the shade of a mango tree. His mother was very pleased to see him return. His father, weakened by arthritis but smiling through tears, clasped Koko's hand with trembling fingers. "I bought food," Koko said softly, placing the satchel down, "and medicine and tools. You won't work alone anymore." His mother embraced him, whispering blessings, her tears soaking his shoulder. His father welcomed him with love and open arms. That night, as they ate together under the stars, for the first time in weeks, Koko looked out the window toward the forest leading to the sea, full and content. He could hear the waves splashing under the moonlight like a promise. He had become more than a fisherman. He was now a protector, a provider, a lifeline. And already he was dreaming of the next voyage. If you have enjoyed our story so far, please click the like and subscribe button to help us serve you better and keep our channel alive with intriguing and captivating stories of interest to you. Thank you. Now, back to our story. Third voyage, Shadows Beyond the Shore. Following the pirate ambush, Koko's name spread beyond Waramba, like sea foam riding the tide. Songs were sung in the marketplace, and children mimicked his heroic feats with sticks and oars. Fishermen from nearby villages, once indifferent, now arrived at the Waramba docks with cautious curiosity, their eyes peeled for a glimpse of the invincible boy. But not all who heard his tale were enthused and happy. In Makundani, a rival village 2 coves east, jealousy brewed like a storm. Makundani had once been the heart of the coastal trade, known for its daring fishermen and deep-sea hunting prowess. But lately, their catches had dwindled, their influence slipping. Waramba's sudden rise in fame and the story of a young hero who could wrestle and subdue pirates was a bitter salt in their wounds. Among Makundani's leaders was Chief Z Kiraho, a shrewd leader and prideful fisherman who had long sought to dominate the coastline. To him, Waramba's rise smelled of trickery, not talent. "No boy fights off pirates and lives," he spat one evening before a fire, surrounded by younger, restless men. "They worship a myth, but myths can drown." With this in mind, Makundani fishermen challenged Waramba's men to a deep-sea fishing contest, demanding also to board and inspect their catch. This is to determine which of the 2 villages is superior. Waramba elders held a village meeting, the air tense with talk of sabotage and confrontation. Koko stood silently at the back, arms folded. He could feel the weight of their eyes, some hopeful, others expectant. Would the boy who beat pirates now fight rival villages too? But inside him a storm brewed. He still heard the good witch's voice on sleepless nights. "Boast not of this gift, tell no soul." Yet every new challenge brought eyes turning to him, voices whispering about his strength. How long could he hide what he was? How long before someone demanded the truth? That night, beneath the mango tree outside his home, Koko sat alone. His heart was heavy, not from fear, but from responsibility. He missed being just a boy, missed the simple dreams of casting nets and coming home tired but free. Now, even silence was loud with expectation. What if I fail them one day? What if I'm found out? The stars above twinkled like scattered shells, but offered no comfort. Just then, his father joined him, leaning on a stick for support. "You've changed, son," his father said gently. Koko's breath caught. Does he know? "But not in the way others think," his father continued. "You've become stronger, not just in the arms, but here." He tapped Koko's chest. "And in here." He pointed to his temple. "I'm proud of you, not for the stories people tell, but for the man I see growing behind those stories." Koko's eyes stung. He fought the urge to speak of the witches, the curse and the gift, the weight of secrecy. But the warning pulsed in his blood. He could not risk it. Instead, he nodded and for the first time in weeks smiled, grateful for love that didn't need explanations. The challenge. Days later, Waramba received an official invitation. Makundani had challenged them to a deep-sea fishing contest. A public show of strength and skill, disguised as tradition, but vibrating with rivalry. Refusing would be weakness. Accepting could risk more sabotage. Or worse. Koko joined the crew, but this time with resolve. He would not let anger rule him. He would protect with purpose, not pride. Out on the open sea, the Makundani boats approached, sleek and silent. Their nets were ready, their oarsmen fierce. Koko felt the familiar surge within him as the sun began to sink, his power awakening like a tide drawn by the moon. Makundani's tactics turned aggressive. One of their boats veered close, nearly slicing through Waramba's net. But Koko stepped forward, calm, focused. He didn't attack, he didn't boast. Instead, with his strength masked in ordinary movements, he maneuvered their boat with such mastery that their nets filled swiftly. Their boat glided without fail, and the Makundani fishermen, despite their tricks, found themselves outmatched by precision, not brute force. By dawn, Waramba had caught more, lost nothing, and stood unshaken. The challenge was over. Waramba was superior. Back in Waramba, drums echoed through the village. The people celebrated not just the victory, but the dignity shown in the face of provocation. Koko joined the feast quietly, choosing a corner near the fire, watching laughter dance across the faces he now lived to protect. Inside, he still wrestled with questions of power, of truth, of who he was becoming. But for now, he had found a way to carry the gift without being devoured by it. And in the whispers of the waves that night, he heard not warnings, but a promise. More trials will come, but so will strength. Koko, the sea boy, the protector of Waramba, was ready, a spy revealed. Meanwhile, a curious, nosy man called Ndalo had been spying on Koko. On the night of celebration, as he spied on, Koko's senses flared and he looked around him. Sensing that someone was secretly watching him, Ndalo turned to slip away, but snapped a twig beneath his heel. Koko spotted him. He leapt over the boulders and grabbed the spy by the collar before the man could run. "Who are you?" Koko growled, his strength crackling like static under his skin. Ndalo struggled to break free from Koko's iron-clad grip, wide-eyed. I'm no enemy. I was only sent to observe. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know it was real." Koko's grip tightened. "You saw too much." The spy whimpered, "Please, if I go back now, they'll kill me. Kiraho sent me. He's planning something worse. A storm of men. Sabotage. They want to burn your docks, sink your boats, and frame the pirates." Koko's mind raced. He couldn't kill the man, not just because it wasn't right, but because violence could never protect secrets for long. He had to think differently. "You'll do something for me," he said coldly. Ndalo nodded furiously. "Anything. You'll go back and say I'm nothing, that the legends are lies, that I run from danger, not into it." The spy blinked. "But why?" "Because fear grows in mystery. Let them believe I'm a coward. Better that than to draw a war to my people." Ndalo agreed and stumbled away into the night, his mind broken with confusion, and once again Koko stood alone, knowing that his secret is becoming vulnerable to exposure. It's a matter of time. The next morning, the villagers noticed Koko was quieter than usual. He helped mend nets. He cleaned the hulls. Old Captain Jeffrey placed a hand on his shoulder. "You've changed, my boy. There's more than fish weighing you down." Koko only nodded. "The sea's full of secrets, old man. I'm just learning how deep they go." But in his heart, he knew. The villagers of Makundani were not done. He knew that another storm was coming. Sabotage at dawn, the fall of Kiraho of Makundani. The sun rose red over Waramba, a burning omen that bled across the sky. The fishermen muttered about bad luck, about strange dreams and dead fish floating near the shore. But Koko knew better. This was no superstition. War. The warning from the spy Ndalo still echoed in Koko's ears. Kiraho plans to burn your docks and blame the pirates. Kiraho, the ruthless chief of Makundani, had grown jealous. Waramba's thriving fish trade, bolstered by Koko's strength, was drawing attention from merchants up and down the coast. While Makundani's boats returned with empty nets, Waramba celebrated nightly with barrels of salted fish and laughter. Kiraho's pride could not take it. He wanted blood. The saboteurs. At midnight, under cover of low clouds and the lull of high tide, 6 men crept along the shore, each armed with tar, oil, and flame. They were Makundani's most ruthless hands, trained in silence, sent to destroy. But Koko, sensing something foul in the wind, had not slept. Hidden behind stacked crates near the dock, he waited, muscles twitching, power humming beneath his skin. It was dusk. He was invincible. The first saboteur struck a match. That was his mistake. With a flash of motion, Koko launched from the shadows like a sea storm. He caught the man's arm mid-swing and snapped it like a twig, the torch clattering harmlessly to the ground. "Tell Kiroho," Koko growled. "Waramba is protected." The men tried to scatter, but Koko was a hurricane in human form, moving faster than thought, hurling men into the shallows, splintering wooden crates like paper. 3 men fled in panic. 2 were unconscious before they could blink. The 6th man was cornered. Koko grabbed him by the collar. "Where is Kiroho?" The man whimpered. He's there, behind the sea shrine watching." Koko's eyes narrowed. Confrontation at the sea shrine. The sea shrine was a sacred place, carved into the cliffside by the first ancestors of Waramba. Untouchable, even to outsiders. But there, under the mocking moon, stood Kiroho, chief of Makumbi himself, cloaked in black and arrogance. "So the boy becomes a monster," he sneered. "No one man should have this power. You bring ruin, not glory." Koko stepped forward. "I never asked for power, but I'll use it to protect my people." Makumbi drew a dagger carved from shark bone, a relic said to drink strength from its victims. "Then die for them, boy." Their battle was like thunder over stone. Kiroho struck first with a spear-like weapon, fast and brutal. Koko dodged, grabbed the chief's arm, and hurled him against the shrine wall. Kiroho recovered with surprising speed, slashing Koko's side, but the blade did not pierce. The witch's magic held strong. Koko countered with a fist to the chest that sent the old chief sprawling. But Makumbi rose again, bloodied and snarling, whispering a curse in an old tongue. Dark wind swirled around him, some strange force of ancient magic. "You're not the only one blessed by the night," Kiroho bellowed. But Koko stood unshaken. "Blessings don't come with hate," he said. And with one final surge of strength, Koko launched forward and struck a blow so fierce the shrine stones themselves cracked. Kiroho collapsed, the wind died, and the curse fled like smoke in the breeze. He did not rise again. Makumbi's eyes faded, wide with disbelief. The man who thought himself untouchable, undefeatable, was silenced. Forever. 4th voyage, shadows beyond the shore. Koko embarked on his 4th night voyage with the fishermen, the recurrent lapping of the waves against the boat's body filling the air as their small boat ventured into the dark expanse of the sea. The company of the fishermen, their songs of the sea, and the hum of the night sky above made Koko feel as though he was stepping into another dream. A dream where he belonged to the ocean, its unending mysteries his to continue to unravel. This time, they headed in a different direction where they had not explored before. Koko was again excited to be there, dreaming of new but pleasant experience in this direction. But dreams have a way of twisting into nightmares. The Tempest. Many hours into the journey, they had accomplished their mission and had a very good haul of different fish and other seafood, and towards evening the next day, when they were preparing to make a turn and return to their land, the once calm sea waters began to stir restlessly, exhibiting serious disturbance. The air thickened, and an ominous wind swept across the boat, carrying with it the scent of impending disaster. The fishermen exchanged uneasy glances as the waves grew larger, crashing against the vessel with a ferocity that shook its timbers. The storm arrived with a sudden deafening roar, a tempest of howling winds and blinding rain that turned the world into chaos. Koko clung to the boat as the fishermen fought valiantly against the raging sea, their shouts drowned by the storm's thunderous symphony. Lightning illuminated the scene in stark flashes, revealing waves like liquid mountains rising to swallow them whole. The boat groaned under the relentless onslaught and splashing of powerful waves on its body, its structure pushed beyond endurance. The boat endured until such a time close to dusk, when with a heart-wrenching crack, the vessel surrendered to the storm, splintering into pieces and casting its crew into the merciless embrace of the ocean. Amidst the swirling maelstrom, panic gripped the men as they struggled to stay afloat. Koko's heart pounded in his chest as he remembered the witch's words. It was dusk again, the threshold where his power awakened. As the raging water threatened to consume him, a surge of energy ignited within him, as if the storm itself had awakened the gift lying dormant in his veins. Koko's fear dissolved, replaced by an almost primal resolve. He felt his muscles tighten, his strength amplify to an otherworldly degree. With strokes that defied the fury of the waves, he propelled himself through the churning water, cutting through it as though he belonged to the sea. Every swell that sought to drag him under was met with unstoppable force, his newfound power driving him onward. Koko and the captain survived the storm. The distance to the faint silhouette of land seemed impossibly far, but Koko pressed on. Hours passed as he fought against the relentless ocean, his lungs burning and his limbs straining but never faltering. The storm lashed at him with unyielding rage, but he was undeterred, a beacon of determination against nature's wrath. Finally, as the storm began to wane and the first rays of dawn teased the horizon, Koko's feet touched solid ground. Collapsing onto the wet sand of an unfamiliar island, his body trembled with exhaustion. The superhuman strength that had carried him through the night began to ebb away with the retreating darkness. But he was alive. Alone on this desolate shore, Koko had survived what no ordinary person could. The sea, which had sought to claim him, had instead borne witness to his unyielding spirit and the power gifted to him by forces beyond comprehension. In the serene embrace of the ocean, on the remote and seemingly deserted island, Koko, a 15-year-old boy who had recently found himself cast away, was making the most of his unexpected solitude. Each morning he foraged for fish and fruits along the vibrant shoreline, embracing the rhythm of the island that had become his temporary refuge. The simplicity of survival, fishing in the crystalline waters and picking ripe fruits, kept him anchored to hope. Unbeknownst to Koko, the captain of the wrecked ship, Mr. Jeffrey, had also survived. He had washed ashore miles away on the same cursed isle and was now trudging along the vast stretches of sand, his eyes scanning the horizon for any hint of human life. Jeffrey was unaware that fate had spared another soul besides his own. One day, as he sat at the dock of the bay, watching the tides roll on and roll away, as he had drifted a few thousand kilometers here to make this empty dock his home, thinking it looks like nothing's going to come his way. His innate curiosity and relentless spirit came over him, and he stood up and set out to explore deeper into the island. Unknowingly, the land was governed by the ancient Jijimbuti tribe, notorious for their hostility towards outsiders and dark rituals devoted to their fearsome deity. Meanwhile, in the aftermath of the catastrophic shipwreck, chaos reigned as the merciless sea claimed everything it could. Amid the debris and the cries of desperation, Captain Jeffrey emerged as another survivor. Clinging to a battered lifebuoy, his face was a mask of exhaustion and determination. Each wave crashed over him like a vengeful slap, drenching him and testing his resolve with every passing second. His arms, heavy with fatigue, paddled desperately and helplessly toward the faint silhouette of the distant island. His strength failing him many times, the ocean roared with the fury of a wild beast, its monstrous waves rising and falling as though determined to consume every last remnant of the wreck. The salt stung Jeffrey's eyes and the cold gnawed at his very core, but he pressed on, driven by sheer willpower and the instinct to survive. For Jeffrey, each wave seemed more relentless than the last, but the island's shore grew closer, a beacon of hope. Many hours after Koko's arrival at the island, with a final desperate push, exhausted, Jeffrey was carried by the tide onto the beach, collapsing some miles away from where Koko landed hours earlier. So Mr. Jeffrey had also survived the sea's wrath, though barely. The relentless and merciless waves had cast him ashore like a broken relic from the storm. He lay motionless for what felt like an eternity, the gritty sand clinging to his drenched and battered body. The faint cries of seabirds eventually stirred him, their echoes mingling with the ceaseless crashing of waves, a reminder that he was still alive. As consciousness returned, Jeffrey dragged himself to his feet, his legs trembling beneath him like a newborn fawn. Every muscle ached, his soaked uniform clinging to his skin, tattered and streaked with salt. His hands instinctively shielded his eyes from the piercing sunlight as he gazed at the endless shoreline stretching in both directions. the sand shimmering like gold under the fiery sun. The sight offered little or no comfort. It was desolate, lifeless, and hauntingly silent. He began to walk, each step sinking into the soft, unforgiving sand. The vastness of the beach seemed to stretch into eternity, a cruel and unyielding expanse that mocked his desperation. His eyes, bloodshot and weary, darted towards the horizon, scanning for any sign of hope, a flicker of movement, a plume of smoke, anything that might indicate he was not alone. But the land betrayed no secrets, offering only an oppressive solitude that weighed on him like the remnants of the storm still clinging to his soul. Unbeknownst to Geoffrey, somewhere on the same cursed isle, another survivor was carving his own path through the trials of the unknown. Koko, the boy with a secret gift, had also been spared by the sea, their destinies now tied together by an invisible thread. As Geoffrey trudged onward, his shadow stretching long behind him, the island's mysteries loomed ahead, waiting to test their resilience in ways neither could yet fathom. But the trials of survival were only beginning, and this desolate island held secrets and dangers far beyond the fury of the sea. On his third day on the island, after finding himself some fruits to eat, Geoffrey trudged onward along the desolate seashore, the weight of exhaustion pressing heavily on his shoulders. The island seemed to grow more ominous with each step. The relentless sun cast his shadow long and wavering behind him, a silent companion on this journey into the unknown. The rhythmic crashing of waves provided a hollow soundtrack to his thoughts, but the stillness beyond the shore's edge carried an eerie undertone, a silence too perfect, too unnatural. It was dark, and he slept near two boats that had been abandoned there by the sea. Or does someone own them? Where could they be? As he asked these questions, he slept off. At dawn, Geoffrey continued his journey, looking for signs of life, and suddenly, out of the corner of his eye, Geoffrey caught the faintest flicker of movement near the palm trees that fringed the beach. He froze mid-step, his instincts sharpened by years of braving the unpredictable sea. Narrowing his eyes, he stared intently into the dense undergrowth, his heart thudding in his chest. The leaves swayed gently in the breeze, offering no clues, no sign of life. Was his exhausted mind playing tricks on him? He shook his head and pressed on, dismissing the moment as his imagination playing cruel games. But the island was alive, watching, waiting. He is unaware that the land was governed by the ancient Jijimbuti tribe, notorious for their hostility towards outsiders and dark rituals devoted to their fearsome deity. The captain is captured. As Geoffrey the captain neared the tree line, a sudden rustle erupted from the shadows, swift and coordinated. Before he could react, figures emerged like specters from the jungle, their movements as fluid as the wind. Savage-looking tribesmen with painted faces and sharp, glinting weapons surrounded him in an instant. Their eyes burned with aboriginal intensity, their silence more terrifying than any war cry. Panic surged through Geoffrey as he stumbled back, only to find himself encircled, their spears and machetes gleaming in the sunlight. Geoffrey dodged through the circle and bolted with speed. The fierce tribe chased after him, and one of them struck him on the head from behind with precision, their movements a practiced choreography of capture. A brutal blow to the back of his head sent him to his knees, the coarse sand grinding against his skin. They seized him, forcing his arms behind him. Ropes, thick and unyielding, were wound tightly around his wrists and ankles, rendering him completely immobilized. Geoffrey's protests died in his throat as they hoisted him to his feet, their grip ironclad. His heart pounded in his chest, a primal terror coursing through his veins as they dragged him into the dense jungle. The sounds of the shore faded, replaced by the unsettling rustle of leaves and the low murmur of distant drums. Through the labyrinth of trees, they carried him to their village, a collection of crude yet imposing huts clustered around a massive clearing. At its center stood a gruesome effigy carved with grotesque precision, its towering figure a testament to the tribe's fearsome deity. Geoffrey's captors shoved him forward, and he stumbled to his knees before an imposing figure seated atop an ornately decorated throne, Jibaki, chief of the Jijimbuti tribe. His gaze, sharp and unyielding, bore into Geoffrey as if peeling back his very soul. Geoffrey's pulse thundered in his ears as he knelt before the chief, the ropes cutting into his flesh. He realized with chilling clarity that he had stumbled into a nightmare far darker than the storm that had cast him onto this cursed isle. The island had revealed its first secret, and it was far more terrifying than he could have ever imagined. In the serene embrace of the ocean, on the remote and seemingly deserted island, Koko, who on the far side had found himself castaway, oblivious of Geoffrey's presence on the island, was making the most of his unexpected solitude. Each morning he foraged for fish and fruits along the vibrant shoreline, embracing the rhythm of the island that had become his temporary refuge. The simplicity of survival fishing in the crystalline waters and picking ripe fruits kept him anchored to hope. On the third day of his arrival on the island, marking Geoffrey's actual day of capture, he sat at the dock of the bay, deep in thought as he watched the tides roll on and roll away. He gathered some fish and fruits and settled down to eat. As his innate curiosity and relentless spirit came over him, he stood up and set out to explore deeper into the island. He, as Geoffrey, was totally unaware of the hostile and murderous Djimbuti tribe and their custom dark ritualistic practices on strangers. As Koko ventured deeper into the heart of the untamed island, the air grew heavier, charged with an unshakable tension. The distant rhythmic thrum of drums reverberated through the dense forest canopy, each beat echoing like the pulse of a living, breathing entity. Ah, signs of life at last. The sound was hypnotic, primal, drawing Koko forward as though the island itself were summoning him. Every step he took crackled against the underbrush, the forest whispering its secrets in the rustle of leaves and the occasional haunting call of unseen creatures. The deeper he went, the more the forest seemed to close in around him. The drumbeats grew louder, their rhythm intoxicating, as if synchronizing with the pounding of his own heart. Driven by an almost magnetic pull, Koko pushed through the thick undergrowth, his every sense on high alert. Koko is captured. Suddenly the forest gave way to a vast, chilling clearing, and Koko froze in his tracks. Before him, some distance away, stood a colossal effigy, its grotesque form carved with unsettling precision. Towering over the clearing, the effigy seemed almost alive, its surface adorned with intricate carvings that told stories of power, fear, and reverence. Its many faces, stark and haunting, bore expressions of wrath, sorrow, and eerie calm, the god of the Djimbuti tribe immortalized in wood and stone. The sight sent a shiver down Koko's spine. The air here was different, thicker, oppressive, as if the ground itself vibrated with the weight of centuries of dark rituals and whispered prayers. Around the effigy, crude altars and totems were scattered, their surfaces stained with what looked disturbingly like blood. The drumbeats were deafening now, resonating through the clearing and filling Koko with a sense of dread he couldn't shake. Koko did not have the faintest idea that Captain Geoffrey survived the storm and was already a captive somewhere there in their midst. This was no ordinary place. It was the sacred heart of the Djimbuti, a shrine to gods that demanded fear, sacrifice, and unwavering devotion. Koko's instincts screamed for him to turn back, to retreat into the safety of the forest, but his legs refused to move. The clearing seemed to hold him captive, his gaze locked onto the towering effigy that loomed above like a silent sentinel. Its presence a chilling reminder that he was no longer merely a boy lost on an island. He was an intruder in a realm of ancient, unfathomable power. At that moment, before the towering statue, as Koko scanned on, his gaze locked onto a figure tied to a stake. Oh my goodness, Mr. Geoffrey survived. Unbelievable. He must have been captured earlier by the natives and brought to their chief for sacrifice. The captain's eyes were wide with despair, his body limp against the rough bindings that held him captive. The air was thick with the scent of impending doom as preparations for a human sacrifice were unmistakably underway. Koko's heart thundered like a war drum in his chest as he crouched in the shadows between two gnarled trees, their twisted roots gripping the earth like claws. The clearing before him pulsed with tension, the towering effigy casting a sinister shadow over the sacred ground. He tried to steady himself, but dread crept into his veins like poison. Suddenly, a rustle in the underbrush shattered the tense silence. Koko's eyes darted toward the source, his pulse spiking. From the shadows, 4 tribesmen emerged, their movements swift and precise, their painted faces grim masks of intent. Sunlight glinted off the cruel edges of their spears and machetes, the weapons glimmering like harbingers of doom. Koko's breath caught as the men fanned out, their eyes scanning the dense foliage with predatory focus. Before Koko could react, they turned toward him as if guided by an unseen force. He froze, his body paralyzed with terror, and in a flash they were upon him. The cold, unyielding points of their weapons hovered inches from his skin, each one promising swift death. His instincts screamed for him to run, to fight, to do anything. He turned to run in fear. The tribesmen moved with practiced efficiency, seizing Koko and binding his wrists and ankles with thick, coarse ropes. He struggled briefly, but their strength was overwhelming, their grip like iron. Dragged to his feet, he could feel their eyes burning into him, their expressions a mix of suspicion and cruel amusement. The primal aura of danger radiating from them was suffocating, each second stretching into an eternity as they hauled him toward the clearing. At the heart of the sacred ground, the imposing Jibaki chief of the Jijimbuti tribe sat on a throne carved from dark, ancient wood, its surface etched with symbols that seemed to writhe in the flickering light. His eyes were sharp and unyielding, like those of a hawk surveying its prey. The tribesman forced Koko to his knees before the chief, who regarded him with an expression of cold calculation. He muttered something in a language Koko didn't understand, his voice low and ominous, before nodding in approval. The finality of the gesture sent a chill down Koko's spine. Without hesitation, the tribesmen dragged Koko away, their grip unrelenting as they marched him to a small, foreboding hut a short distance away from the gathering. Constructed from logs as thick as his waist and reinforced with heavy ironwood doors, the structure exuded an air of grim purpose. Koko's stomach churned as he realized this was no ordinary prison. It was a fortress, designed to contain creatures of immense strength, or perhaps to ensure no escape for the unfortunate souls thrown within. The door creaked open, revealing a dark, stifling interior. Koko was shoved inside with brutal force, the ropes biting into his skin as he stumbled to the floor. The door slammed shut behind him with a deafening thud, the sound reverberating through the small space like a death chime. Koko laid there for a moment, his heart pounding in the oppressive silence, the weight of his capture pressing down on him. As the reality of his situation set in, Koko's mind raced. His secret burned like a live coal in his chest, a power waiting to be unleashed. But with the sun still high in the sky, the boy could do nothing but wait. The faint drumbeats outside reminding him that the true test of his resilience had only just begun. Inside the stifling darkness of the hut, time seemed to slow, each second stretching into an eternity. The air was thick, oppressive, carrying the faint tang of damp wood and sweat. Shadows danced along the walls, the rhythmic pounding of drums outside grew louder, more feverish, each beat reverberating through Koko's chest like the tolling of a death knell. The tribal chants rose in intensity, a guttural, haunting chorus that carried an air of inevitability. Each chant seemed to echo a dire prophecy, a chilling countdown to the grim fate awaiting both Koko and Jeffrey. His mind raced with fragmented thoughts, memories of the storm, the wreck, and the witch's warning. He clenched his fists, feeling the coarse ropes bite into his skin, his body trembling not from fear, but from a burgeoning resolve. Koko's escapes saves the captain. As the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, the atmosphere inside the hut shifted. The shadows seemed to grow bolder, reaching toward him as if heralding the encroaching night. Koko's breath hitched, his pulse quickening as he felt a strange energy stir within him. The witch's words came rushing back. From dusk till dawn, the night will be your ally. The first tendrils of twilight crept into the hut, and with them a surge of power exploded within Koko like a tempest unleashed. It hit him with the force of a tidal wave, an electrifying rush that ignited every nerve, every muscle, and every fiber of his being. The crushing despair that had gripped him mere moments ago was obliterated, replaced by a blazing determination that burned like wildfire. His senses sharpened, his heartbeat thundered like a war drum, and his veins pulsed with a strength that felt both alien and familiar. Koko surged to his feet as the unrelenting power coursed through his veins. His thoughts, now razor-sharp and unyielding, honed in on a singular mission: to escape this wretched prison and rescue Jeffrey before the tribal drums signaled the ritual's deadly climax. Fixing his gaze on the imposing ironwood door, Koko felt no fear, no hesitation, only the unstoppable force roaring within him. With a wild cry, he charged at the barrier, his strength colliding with the unyielding wood in a thunderous explosion. The door, once a fortress of impenetrable might, splintered into wrecks beneath his unstoppable power, fragments scattering like leaves in a storm. Stepping over the wreckage, Koko emerged into the night, his senses ablaze with purpose. The distant glow of firelight guided him, and the relentless pounding of the drums echoed in his ears like a countdown to disaster. Without wasting a moment, he sprinted toward the clearing where Jeffrey was bound to the sacrificial stake. As he moved closer, the ritual's climax loomed, but Koko was ready to confront it head-on. Outside, the feverish sounds of celebration reverberated through the night, a cacophony of drums, chants, and the hypnotic crackle of fire. The tribe was fully engrossed in their rituals, their painted bodies swaying in a primal trance-like dance around the towering effigy. The flames leapt skyward, casting chaotic shadows that flickered and writhed like spirits unleashed into the night. In the chaos of their passion, Koko moved like a phantom, his every step measured and deliberate. The firelight danced across his determined face as he melted into the shadows, the shouts and cries of the tribe masking the sound of his approach. The air was thick with the metallic tang of blood and the oppressive weight of impending doom, but Koko pressed forward, his resolve burning brighter than the flames. His eyes locked onto the center of the gathering, where his boss, Jeffrey, the ship captain, was bound to the sacrificial stake. The stakes arranged ominously around him were more than a grim display. They were a countdown to his death. Jeffrey's face was pale, his body trembling with exhaustion. The guards, enraptured by the escalating frenzy of the ritual, failed to notice the figure creeping ever closer until it was too late. With lightning-fast precision, Koko lunged at the nearest guard, his movements a blur of calculated force. The startled tribesman barely had time to react before Koko wrenched the spear from his grasp, disarming him with an efficiency born of desperation and newfound strength. Without hesitation, Koko turned to Jeffrey and sliced through the bindings with the sharp spear edge. The ropes fell away, and Jeffrey staggered forward, his freedom so sudden it took a moment to register. "K. Koko," he whispered, his voice trembling with gratitude and disbelief. His body was weak, but his eyes reflected the flicker of hope reignited by the boy's daring rescue. "There's no time to talk," Koko urged, gripping Jeffrey's arm to steady him. The chants grew louder, the drums more frantic, as if the tribe could sense the intrusion. "We have to move now." Together, with Koko's help, they vanished into the shadows, the ritual's firelight shrinking behind them as they fled into the cover of the night. The tribesmen discovered what had happened and raised alarm. Return of the survivors. They were now being pursued, with bows, arrows, and spears. "This way," shouted Koko. "We can lose them in the forest." The underbrush was thick, slowing their pursuers, but Koko and Jeffrey pushed forward with all the speed they could muster. Branches snapped back and leaves rustled loudly underfoot as they made their way through the dense jungle, paths leading back to the abandoned boats which Jeffrey had found before his capture. They untied a boat. Just as Koko and Jeffrey maneuvered the boat into the water, the stillness of the night shattered. From the shadows of the shoreline, the tribesmen burst forth, their primal cries echoing like thunder across the bay. The firelight from the village flickered off their weapons as they fired a hailstorm of arrows, their aim sharp and relentless. Koko ducked instinctively, adrenaline surging through him as he paddled with furious urgency. But a sharp, guttural gasp from Jeffrey froze his blood. Turning, he saw the captain slumped forward, an arrow protruding from his back shoulder, its shaft slick with crimson. Koko's heart clenched as Jeffrey's labored breaths rasped against the chaos. "Hold on," Koko barked, his voice a mix of determination and fear. He helped Jeffrey lie flat at the bottom of the boat, shielding him as best he could. With his supernatural strength still coursing through his veins, Koko paddled with a ferocity that defied human limits. The boat surged through the water, slicing through the waves like a spear, leaving the pursuing tribesmen and their arrows in its wake. Geoffrey, though racked with pain, refused to succumb entirely. Using his remaining strength, he fashioned a crude compass from fragments he salvaged from the boat, guiding their desperate escape toward the faint hope of salvation. But his condition rapidly worsened. Sweat poured down his face, and his breathing grew shallow, the poisoned arrow spreading its venom through his body like wildfire. Blood trickled from his wound and nose, staining the boat's floor in dark, foreboding streaks. Koko's focus sharpened to a razor's edge. He paddled relentlessly, his arms a blur of motion, each stroke propelling them closer to salvation. As the boat moved with unnatural speed, Geoffrey, too weak to lift his head, could only vaguely sense the incredible force driving their flight from death. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Koko felt his strength beginning to wane. The power that had fueled his escape ebbed away with the retreating darkness, leaving only the sheer grit and resolve of a determined boy. They are now a few hundred miles away from the dangerous Jijimbuti land and closer to Waramba land. The silhouette of land emerged in the distance, and with it, the faint outline of familiar fishing boats anchored along the shore. Relief flooded Koko's chest, but his arms ached, now relying only on human will to bridge the final stretch. Geoffrey's condition had worsened. His skin was pale, his breathing shallow. Koko, his natural body screaming in protest, paddled with the last reserves of his strength. The boat scraped against the sandy shore with a jolt, and Koko stumbled onto the beach, his legs trembling beneath him. "Help!" he shouted, his voice cracking with urgency. "Someone help us!" As fishermen ran toward them, Koko collapsed beside the unconscious Geoffrey, his own strength finally giving out. The poisoned arrow's toll was heavy, but the sight of others rushing to their aid was the first glimmer of hope in a night that had tested the limits of survival and courage. Koko's vision blurred, but he held on to the faint satisfaction of knowing they had reached the edge of salvation. 7.1 The captain recovers. The people there present rushed, and the Captain Geoffrey to the nearest hospital, where treatment of the poisoning for Geoffrey, followed by that of his arrow wound. After many hours' sleep, Mr. Geoffrey woke up, saw Koko by his bedside and whispered, "Thank you, Koko, my boy," Geoffrey said after recovering, his voice filled with gratitude and awe. "I don't know how you did all that, but I'm alive because of you. You are an invincible boy. I owe you my life." "Thank you for everything," said the captain to Koko. The following morning marked the third day of Mr. Geoffrey's stay in the hospital, a grueling battle against the poison and his injuries that had pushed him to the brink. Yet, against the odds, he had prevailed. As the doctor handed him his discharge papers and declared him an outpatient, Geoffrey's gratitude was palpable. The nurses who had come to admire his resilience exchanged warm smiles as he slowly made his way out of the hospital with Koko at his side. The sun bathed the streets in golden light as they walked toward Geoffrey's home, the air filled with a sense of renewal and quiet triumph. Geoffrey, his steps steady but deliberate, turned to Koko with a smile that carried both warmth and sincerity. "Koko, my boy," he said, his voice heavy with emotion, "you're like family now. I can't thank you enough for what you've done. So tell me, would you like to join my boat crew? I could use someone with your courage and skill." Koko hesitated for a moment, the weight of the journey they had endured flashing through his mind. Then, with a grin that betrayed his excitement, he nodded. "Sure, sir," he said, his voice steady but laced with enthusiasm. "I'd be pleased." As they reached Geoffrey's home, the captain wasted no time gathering the local fishermen and a few curious villagers. His voice carried a storyteller's cadence as he began recounting the harrowing saga. He painted vivid pictures of their voyage across treacherous waters, the violent storm that shattered their vessel, the nightmare of their capture on the forbidden island, and the heart-stopping moments of their escape. The gathered crowd hung on every word, their expressions shifting from awe to disbelief to admiration as Geoffrey detailed the trials they had faced. With each passing moment, Koko felt a quiet pride swell within him, not from the recognition, but from knowing they had both survived and forged a bond stronger than any storm or trial. By the time Geoffrey finished, the fishermen erupted in applause, their admiration for Koko and Geoffrey shining bright as the day itself. A morning of new beginnings. There was a celebration not just of survival, but of courage, loyalty, and the strength of human spirit. Koko stood beside Geoffrey, feeling for the first time that he had found a place where he truly belonged. He told Mr. Geoffrey that he would discuss the offer with his parents and join his crew as requested, but he had to quickly set off for home. As he entered into his village, there was a crowd that welcomed him, and his parents got a wind of his arrival. He got home, narrated everything to them, and promised to work hard to assist his parents. Koko was one of the best Geoffrey ever had, and after a year working with him, he asked Koko to mention what he would like him to do for him. Koko thanked Geoffrey and requested for a small boat that he would be coming to work on weekends and would like to return to school. Mr. Geoffrey agreed and promised to sponsor him to any level of education that he desires. So Koko headed for his home, kept his secret, even as he became known as the boy who survived the wrath of the sea. He remembered the witch's words and lived every day with gratitude, his nights filled with the quiet acknowledgement of his gift. Koko turned his father's small farm around and made it very profitable again. His 2 days' work from after school till after dusk at the farm, a week was like 12 weeks' work. Made enough money every weekend to feed the whole family and paid for the medical management of his father's arthritis. Koko graduated secondary school and took over his father's farm business, which he had rejuvenated, and he left the fishing business to concentrate on the farm. He was now 20 years of age, and his family had started to climb financially. He plans to go to part-time university education in the nearest future. Thus, Koko the Invincible remained humble, never boasting of his nocturnal prowess, a hero not just of strength but of spirit, forever shaped by the enigmatic encounter that one eerie night by the seaside. He would press on to become a relevant member of society, get full information of their existence and their murderous practices to government, and get an army to visit, negotiate, and educate them to embrace modern life, and get consistent support for development from government. Watch out, the return of Koko to Jijimbuti land. We hope you remembered to click the like and subscribe button to help us serve you better and keep our channel alive with super stories for your pleasure. Thank you.